Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. So today I am here with Kyle Garner, the son of Jennifer Garner. Pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And you are what? The president?
I'm the CEO of Organic India USA.
Okay, so Organic India. So my goal for this interview is I've been a longtime fan. Organic India's, the U.S. offices are based right here in Boulder. We've been neighbors and we've both been around for 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
Been a long time fan. We did a feature on you in our magazine like 10 years ago, but we haven't really connected that much since. And so we're both businesses, we're about to head out to Natural Products Expo. And for those watching, every single business you see in Whole Foods or any grocery is featured there.
Yes.
And we have a fun job. We go there and interview. We find all the best organic, mission-driven companies and interview them. And guess how many actual mission-driven companies we find out of 3,000?
Probably not as many as people would think.
Yeah, not so many. So there's lots of decent and good businesses, not to talk ill about anyone, but in terms of businesses who are good for the planet, good for the consumer, the tea drinker in this case, and good for your employees. So tell us, just lay out like maybe your connection, how the business started in India, and why are you so good for the Indians, for the farmers there?
Great, yeah. So our company was founded in India almost 20 years ago now, wow. And we've been in the U.S., as you said. This is just started our 16th year in the U.S., and the company was really founded out of an interesting hybrid of trying to solve two problems that I think the founders didn't know were problems before they got started. And our founders are husband and wife duo who weren't at the time, but both met in India on a spiritual journey.
And are they still involved?
They are still involved, right. Still own the company.
And that seems to be key. You guys haven't you haven't sort of sold out.
Yeah, they brought in one partner who is a big retail operation in India. It's been great for the business and great as a partner, but it's still privately held by the family and their one partner. And they moved to India, like I said, on this spiritual mission about 25 years ago, and learned at the time, this was really the peak of the green revolution sweeping through the global south. So all these farmers, populations were growing, and the governments were saying, to feed this growing population, we're going to have to adapt some of these Western agricultural practices. And so you had all these small family farmers that had been doing the same thing for thousands of years, basic organic, before they knew what the word was. In India, they call it Vedic agriculture, these traditional approaches. You use what's on the land. You have your soil, you have your cow, that's your fertilizer. I mean, it's really a closed system. Yeah. And the idea was, no, that's not going to work. We got to scale everything big and do it like the US. And this was the idea of the Green Revolution. Wow. What happened was, like a lot of these revolutions in the early years, farmers saw some pretty good yields and things were working and it was being painted as a success story. But what was also happening was it was actually creating this cycle of debt for the farmers.
Right, because they now had to buy fertilizer often from Monsanto or whatever.
Exactly. And they had never bought an input material in those families for thousands of years, and now suddenly they had it. And if your crop succeeds, great. You use the profits, you pay for the pesticides, you pay for the fertilizer. It's a great model. When you have a crop failure, which is actually more common in conventional systems than organic systems, what do you do then? You don't have income coming in at the end of the year, and yet you still owe this money. Right. And in the last 20 years, over 300,000 farmers have killed themselves because of this debt in India that they've gotten into.
So in India alone, that is just stunning. And a lot of us read about that, and Monsanto was pretty intimately involved with that transition. 300,000 suicides because, and naive question, I apologize, but why were they committing suicide? Because they couldn't pay for their land or their family, or
exactly they risk losing the land. A lot of it's a pride thing. Right. They didn't want to face their family being in this debt, and they were often committing suicide by drinking the pesticides that they had. And it's just a horrifying story. And our founders became aware of this and really were looking for a way to help, and we're thinking about doing it kind of an NGO style, right? Finding ways to help support these farmers who you can see on our boxes here.
Yeah,
these are all real farmers.
There's, if I can get the light, there's the company. Yep.
And at the same time, they had met through their travels a Western trained doctor who had gone back into his home village up in Azamgarh, who was a Western trained physician, led one of the largest hospital systems in India. And he was working with in kind of his pseudo retirement, working with a lot of the herbs that we now grow to treat patients for a variety of conditions. Tulsi and ashwagandha and turmeric, these things that are pretty hot now in the US, using them to treat his patients 20 years ago.
Yeah, all the yoga ladies in Boulder spend like $20 on their daily turmeric latte or turmeric drink.
Yeah, which is good for our business, but also you go to these farms and these families would have a Tulsi plant in their yard, and they would go out there and they'd be plucking leaves and eating them for the health benefits. But he was growing troubled because he couldn't get clean Tulsi anymore because there was so much pesticide being sprayed. Right. And the idea was born. What if we train farmers, retrain them to grow organically the way they had been for years, and use those crops to give Dr. Singh the product he needs? No one was thinking at the time about a worldwide tea company, or now dietary supplement company as well. But the idea at its root was really, let's combine these two challenges, and instead of making it a charity for the farmers, let's get them involved in the business and give them something sustainable that they can have, and start working with some of these widowers that had lost their husbands to suicide, and start working with other small family farmers and train them how to do it the right way. And now, 20 years later, 2,500 small family farmers later, we've built this into a global business. And
you guys say not one has quit?
Yeah, that not quit ever. I mean, we've lost obviously some to age, but it's the best thing about it is the farmers stick with us not because we have contracts or that we mandate that they're there. We guarantee them a price. And we've had farmers
at a premium price.
At a premium price, yeah. And so, with fair trade, certification, we use those programs where fair trade operations exist, and where they don't, we just offer a market premium that keeps bringing those farmers back, whether it's
so it's fair trade, but it's also more than fair trade where there are gaps in fair trade.
And in some, not to get down in the weeds, but with fair trade, which is a great program, there are some regions where the local laws make it hard for the farmers to organize a co-op. And a lot of these farmers, if you think about it, they don't want to pool their money with a huge group of people, right? If it's their neighbors, they'll, in Azamgar, we have 250 maybe farmers in that small village. They'll gladly pool their money. They come together. If someone gets sick, they're all chipping in if they need to invest. You get into bigger and bigger regions, and it's like, do I know everybody? Do I really want to pool my money?
Yeah.
And so we apply those practices,
like
whether there's a co-op or not.
Red Sox and Yankee fans to work together.
Exactly.
That's a little bit too much.
maybe not that extreme, but yeah, Reds and Cardinals fans, maybe.
Right.
For those of us that grew up in Cincinnati and the Midwest. But that idea is core to who we are as a company, right? So we don't want to. We've never done it for any other reason than to support these small family farmers. And so if the model became about cutting corners or trying to drive profitability by taking money out of the farmers' pockets, it just doesn't make any sense.
So I want to be clear about a few things. I'm like so crazy enthusiastic about this. I hope people share that. This isn't a commercial. This is an editorial interview. So if I could think of a way to be critical of you guys, I would be.
Yeah.
It's fair trade and better where there's gaps in fair trade with the co-ops. If we care about feminism, particularly in this moment in the U.S., this is an amazing way to empower women in India, right? Yeah. And I was watching that video with that, I don't know her name, but the lady who was talking, she's, I think, one of those widowers.
Yeah.
And the joy and empowerment that happens through having this kind of job.
Yeah, we lovingly call them the Rose Ladies because there's a group of women that have been with us for dozens of years in some cases. Most of the farms, as I said, that the idea is that the family owns their land, right? We want to keep, that's the biggest asset that most of them have. We want them to keep it. Right. So we buy from them, but they get to keep their land. We do have a small R&D farm that we own in Lucknow, where our company's headquartered in India. And we grow the roses for our sweet rose tea on that farm. We grow other crops, but it's the main crop we grow on that land is the rose. And these women come every day and they hand pick the roses. And you see in the video, they process them and they're singing and they're so joyous and they're smiling. And when I go there, I mean, they see this guy, they can't fathom that there's a thing called Boulder, Colorado, let alone that someone's willing to pay $6 or $7 for a box of organic tea that's supporting them. But you can just feel the love. They understand that I'm there because I believe in supporting them.
Right.
but it's as much that they believe in supporting us. I mean, they're so bought into the company mission, and it's done so much for them. And you see it. You hear them singing. You'll be awoken by them singing in the mornings. We've got a temple on site that they'll go and they'll be praying and they'll be worshiping, and you can hear them singing in the joy. It's so evident that it's tied into what we do.
Yeah, it's like at Elephant, all the editors are singing out in the laptop fields
as the sun rises in the laptop fields in the morning.
We go to temple and and so it's good for the farmers. It's good for us. Something that I'm obsessed with is a lot of people love turmeric. People don't realize that turmeric absorbs. It's actually used for this, to absorb and clean toxins out of the land.
Yeah.
So if you're getting conventional turmeric, it actually can concentrate all the toxins from the land. It's used like sunflowers to clean up, Superfund sites and such. So organic turmeric is super important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you think you're having this healthy turmeric, but it could be awful for you.
Yeah, and I think with pesticides alone, outside of the organic practices that get kind of absorbed into the core of that plant,
right?
It's true of most of the plants that we grow. We have a lot of chelating herbs, like Tulsi is a great chelator, so it's sucking in heavy metals. It's kind of designed, So which is good in your body if you're trying to do like heavy metal detoxification.
You're trying to clean your body,
right? Yeah. But if you're taking the plant and it's pulling that out of nature and you're popping on heavy metals and it's sucking up lead, then you're ingesting it. It's kind of counterproductive. And
so if you want to be like an unhealthy person, drinking conventional turmeric is a good way to do that.
Doing anything with turmeric is a pretty good thing for any person, whether you're healthy or unhealthy. It's a great everyday.
Well, I was saying if it's conventional, it's actually almost
could be counterproductive. And I think that's one of the things of, obviously we believe passionately in converting everybody to organic. We would love to convert the world to 100% organic. There are places where it's more important than others. And if you're thinking of drinking tea, what a lot of people don't think about is you're basically making a hot water extract of whatever's in that bag. And so if you're extracting, you're basically, taking the nutrients out of that herb and putting them into a liquid form. If pesticide's in there, you're doing that same thing with the pesticide and just making it easier to get in your body.
A lot of people use nylon and plastic tea bags now too, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, we strongly believe in the compostable tea bags that we use. It's kind of a silk hybrid. So it's it's a silk paper hybrid. Where actually these bags that we have here are the old generation. We've moved to these new tea bags that are even slightly better from a compostability standpoint. Cool. And you said earlier, you were trying to look for something to criticize. I mean, I think for us, that's one of the things we feel really passionate about is the waste stream. We've got the recycled cardboard, the compostable tea bags, but I'll criticize ourselves, the envelopes that the tea bags go in. To protect them, we've got these foil-lined envelopes that we haven't been able to figure out.
And is that mandated?
We need to keep, because we sell our teas largely as dietary supplements because they're medicinal teas, we have to have a set shelf life, and to protect the product that's in there and keep it fresh, we want that product to last at least 30 months from the time it's manufactured. Sure. And so we have to have that protection, and it has to be stable. And so we're in the process of working on trying to get a compostable version of those envelopes. And the technology is finally there where you can do these hybrid structures of paper with compostable materials, like a lot of the cornstarch kind of things that you see in like bio bags with non-GMO versions of corn.
That's exciting.
So the point I was making earlier, it may be hard to find things. That's what I spend my job doing, is I find the things to criticize us on, because we don't want to stop until we've eliminated as much of our footprint as possible. We're working on a solar array for our office here. We just moved into this huge new office space, which is great. But going from this tiny office to this big office, suddenly our footprint has increased exponentially. How do we get solar on the roof to at least eliminate that part of the incremental footprint that we've just taken on?
Good for you. Yeah, I mean, we love to hate plastic here. Plastic never goes away.
Yeah.
As we all are learning it, the fish and the birds and everyone winds up, including ourselves, consuming it. And it's petroleum plus all kinds of chemicals. It's not good for anything. And it really never decomposes. And you kind of don't want it to, because things eat it.
Right.
So that's great. Do you have an idea when you guys might be able to transition?
We're in pilot runs now. It's about the first step is making sure the papers run on the machines, right? Because we've got this whole setup built, and we got to make sure the papers work. And then the bigger challenge for us is we've got to go into stability testing. So then we have to be able to prove that it lasts. And one of the challenges with compostable is they're designed to break down.
Right.
And so we've got to, how do you fine tune that where something can last 30 months and then break down when you need it to? And that's the fine tune. So I think our goal is by this time next year to be in the conversion phase, because we've got to do the stability work first. The cool thing is there's this awesome organization in the Bay Area called OSC2 that's a lot of companies that we think highly of, the Dr. Bronners of the world, the Numi Teas, companies that are, really take this stuff seriously, and they've formed. Oh,
that's like Nutiva and Numi and Ultra Eco.
Yes, Ultra Ecos. And
I've gone to those meetings.
Yeah, and they've created a compostable packaging consortium that we're a part of, and so now we can't. On our own, as a tiny little company, we can't get a packaging company to pay attention.
Sure.
But you get all those brands engaged, and suddenly we've got some buying power, and it's moved the needle dramatically in the 9 months we've been doing it.
Yeah, those companies that's my list of favorite companies on the planet, because most of them are not huge, right? They're kind of mid-sized companies, but they care, and they're actually investing their own money, which is incredibly impressive in the capitalistic kind of world, and partnering with those packaging companies, because the packaging companies see that this could be the next thing. It could be super profitable and the right thing to do.
Yeah, and if the big companies got engaged, if the Unilevers and SCJs and P&Gs of the world decided to buy compostable packaging, every package supplier in the world would be lining up to innovate. When we do it, we're calling and people are like, organic, they hang up the phone before I can even get
we'll get to that later.
But we had me and Numi and Bronners, and what we found is there's enough purchasing power in this industry alone that we've got some big players engaged. We've got some packaging companies that are engaging and helping us innovate. We're working with a company out of Israel that's got some patents on some compostable materials. And so it's exciting that people are paying attention to this. And we actually think for once it's going to be the small guys that are going to flip the needle on packaging. Usually we innovate in product and marketing and all those things. That's where the innovation comes.
Interesting.
Packaging kind of flows down, right? The big companies set the standards. We think we can do it in reverse here.
Right. You could be the California of the U.S.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all these companies are based in California, basically, except for us. So we're calling into the meetings, not joining them in person.
Yeah, I've actually worked to support that community for years by inviting, because we have a lot of advertisers and sponsors. So I invite anyone who's a natural products company. I say, hey, do you want to do this? Join this community, and then I introduce them to Numi or whoever it is.
They're great, and they've got the Climate Collaborative now coming out of that same organization, which is kind of taking the same approach. How do we bring these companies together to tackle environmental challenges related to climate change? And they've got a full day before Expo this year called Climate Day that they're doing with New Hope. So the Wednesday before Expo, full day of activities. If you're going to Expo, you should come a day early.
Wow.
It's amazing.
We are going to Expo. I didn't know about that day.
Yeah, it's the full day Wednesday.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, I'll get you the info, but it's amazing. It's a full day of activities, presenters, everybody from small startups through the big companies that are trying to start paying attention.
Media there to make some noise about it.
Yeah, so New Hope is
great.
Yeah, New Hope's co-sponsoring it with OSC2, the Climate Collaborative.
Right. But you want some consumer-facing media, maybe.
I would think. Yeah.
More the merrier. Anyway, fantastic. So tell me about this word I can't really say properly, regenerative.
Yes.
Agriculture. So how is that beyond organic?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've always been talking about internally and in the past few years externally as well is the idea that, again, our company's called Organic India. So everything we do has to be organic. It's what we believe in.
It's actually not totally true, because a lot of companies call themselves organic, but they aren't actually organic.
Fair enough. Yes. Yeah. We believe in telling the truth. So we're going to call ourselves organic. We're going to be organic. And certainly we are advocating that organic is a best-in-class standard for that. What we found is that some of the original intentions of organic are largely around soil health, have gone to the wayside, and organic is still a great standard, but I think it's lost some of the focus on soil health. And
why does soil health matter to anyone who hasn't already fallen asleep?
So this will make them fall asleep now when I start talking photosynthesis. But if you think about, this is very simple. We breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide, and plants do the opposite.
That wakes me up. I definitely like breathing.
Yeah.
I want to keep breathing.
Our plant friends are taking that carbon dioxide, and as they're kicking out oxygen, they're trapping the carbon in the roots and in the soil.
So they're doing exactly what we want everything to do to combat climate change.
Correct.
And they're sequestering the carbon, cleaning the air.
Exactly. And most of that sequestration is happening through, big trees and things that can obviously breathe in a lot of, oxygen. A or carbon dioxide. A tiny Tulsi plant's not going to do a lot, but tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Tulsi plants, whole fields. So the idea is if you can get more of that carbon back in the soil, because right now we're already at 400-ish parts per million in the atmosphere. If we want to get down to 350 or 300, we can't just stop putting it out. We need
350.org is going to have to rename itself.
Exactly. It's scary how quickly it's going in the opposite direction.
350.org with Bill McKibben, this wonderful organization that basically said we can't afford to go beyond 350 parts. What is it?
Parts per million.
Billion?
Billion or million?
Parts per stuff.
Yeah. I always get those confused.
In terms of carbon.
Yeah.
For climate change, or things will start radically kind of falling apart.
And I think we're seeing that now.
We're at 400 now.
But the good news is you can pretty quickly, by using the land as a carbon sink, by planting more plants, by using regenerative practices, you can get some of that carbon back in the soil, out of the air, into the soil. That's the goal of regenerative agriculture.
Yeah. And you get great tea out of it.
Exactly. And so
you get jobs out of it.
Exactly.
I mean, that whole cycle is just a beautiful thing.
And I'm glad you pointed out the jobs, because when we talk regenerative, the soil is certainly part of it, but it can't just be about the soil. It's got to be about regenerating the livelihoods of these farmers, the communities where they live. It does us no good to sell a bunch of organic tea and suck a bunch of carbon into the ground if we're paying the farmer pennies on the dollar to do it and ruining their livelihood. Right. And that's what most industry has led to, is they've taken advantage of these small farmers in India and turned it into basically indentured servitude. To me, that's not regenerative. It may be the soil. You could design a way that the soil could be regenerative. So when we talk regenerative, it's about human welfare, it's about animal welfare, and it's about the welfare of the planet. And that's what the industry is starting to move to. You hear some of these leading companies talking about regenerative. It's how do we bring all these ideas together, starting with organic. Organic is key, but then building in these other practices as well that talk about soil health, animal health, and the welfare of the farmers.
So exciting. On the front page of Reddit this week, it's a huge website for those who don't know, and it's hardly a kind of environmental hippie, as far from that as it could be. But they had this quote about capitalism that started with slave labor, and then it went to something, I forget, it was like 5 different stages, including prison labor, and just part of capitalism is exploiting people.
Yeah.
So, but no one ever questions whether capitalism works or not. And people are always saying socialism, whatever. So without getting into that whole argument, it's beautiful when through capitalism or whatever we're doing here, we're creating an entire ecosystem that doesn't depend on exploiting people, that in fact, you're paying them a premium price. There's joy, like watching that video of that lady picking roses. You're like, that, if I had the skill, I would love to get it. Looks like heaven.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing where what we've been trying to prove, and I think a lot of other, mission-driven businesses like us, is not only can you do it, it's actually better for business, and there's a better version of capitalism. We're strong believers in capitalism. We have to make a profit to pay our employees and to stay in business.
Right.
But the reality is we're not going to do that off the shoulders of the farmer. And there are enough consumers that are willing to pay the premium that is required to do things the right way because they want to support businesses doing it.
And they want to support their own health.
Yes.
That you're not drinking toxins. I mean, it's just the whole thing.
Exactly. And the reason that businesses like ours and other organic and mission-driven companies are growing at 3 or 4x the size of these big conglomerates is not because we've got the skills or because we've got the money. It's because we've got the right idea, and it's what the consumer's looking for. They want to change the world with their purchases. And if you can tell somebody, I mean, it sounds a bit like a stretch, but if I can tell someone that by buying this product, they are a part of a chain that they don't see, and that the person at the other end of that chain doesn't see, but we're that intermediary that can flow this income that they would not be able to get otherwise, but then also train them and educate them and pay for them to convert to organic. That's good for the planet, but it's also good for the farmer. And on the other end, it's good for the consumer because they're drinking a less toxic, highly healthy product that's helping them live a happier, healthier life.
And what's frustrating for me in media from our perspective is everyone at Natural Products Expo or every product in Whole Foods or whatever, everyone talks a good game, which is makes what you're saying sort of diluted.
Yeah.
Like the power of what you just said is that it's actually real. And we can be a part of that chain when we buy and drink and enjoy the tea and the benefits of it.
Yeah.
It's actually all real. And it would change the whole world in terms of climate change, in terms of exploitation and employment and education and women's rights.
And it's nice because it becomes more of a kind of pre-competitive mindset in the industry where we know, as much as we love what we're doing, I mean, we're still such a tiny speck in the universe of even tea companies, if you narrow it down that tightly. But the reality is, if we can show people that what we're doing is working, the best thing is that everybody copies us. Well, as hard as it would be for my business, I would love 100% of the tea market to go organic. Yeah. Because it would actually move the needle then, and we wouldn't be fighting this uphill battle. Exactly. All those things. Yeah. You know, so is that great for my business? Probably not in the short term, but in the long term, when people see that we're investing in the right things, the consumers that believe in what we're doing are going to be there. Right. And our job, you know, we're not ones that talk about it a lot. That's the irony. You said everybody talks a good game. We kind of do the opposite, which probably isn't to our, we think the actions speak louder than the words. And so we're not out there patting ourselves on the back. We're actually poking holes in our own story, saying, how do we get to compostable? How do we get solar on the roof? But instead of talking about the good that we're doing.
But from a consumer point of view, that's not poking holes in your own story. That means I actually say, oh, you actually care. And then I trust you. And then I have loyalty. Brand loyalty. Yeah. And then I support it. It's the same thing that happens with all the other B Corps. We haven't talked about B Corp like Patagonia or Ben & Jerry's or whatever. You know, companies that develop loyalty based on their integrity will make more money.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we're strong believers in the B Corp movement because it's a way to...
Maybe just tell us what
that is. So for those that aren't familiar, B Corps... there's a concept of a benefit corporation, which is a legal construct, but related to that, there's a certification process that you can do that's run by a third-party nonprofit called B Lab that's called B Corp certification. And basically, when you sign up for that,
is it on here?
It should be on our package. These might be older boxes.
Yeah, we have vintage.
We need to refresh your inventory here at the Elephant.
Thank God it's plastic, so it lasts for 300
years
long.
It's the nice B
it's a simple B with a
circle around it. This started as a way for organizations to not only say they were doing good, but to then be able to prove it using a third-party certification that by definition has to be transparent. You put up your score, you take the test that measures every aspect of your business, from environmental to the way you treat your employees to the way you govern the business, and then you post it online. It's visible to all. You go to bcorporation.net, search for Organic India USA, you will see our score. It's right there with everybody else. And there's a minimum threshold that you have to be certified. And so it's a 200-point scale. You have to get at least 80 to be certified. And people go, only 80. About 80% of the people that would try to get there wouldn't get anywhere close to that. So to get the 80 is already hard. We did it the first time at Organic India 2 years ago. I had been at a previous company and led a B Corp certification there. Started at Organic India, and I was in the interview process with the founders, and I said, why aren't you guys a B Corp? And like most people, they said, what's a B Corp? And when I explained it, they're like, well, I think we are. We've just never certified yet. And that's the idea. You know, the company, I think its essence has been with that mindset. We went through the certification process and got, I think, 105. I think we're up to 120 now.
Wait, out of what?
Out of 200. Best in class. You know, there's a couple companies, you know, the Badger Balms, the really great companies in this space that are getting 130s, 140s, the Patagonias of the world. And why we feel great about the 120, it puts us in the upper echelons of even within the B Corp community, which is already great. But for us, it's been more the challenge of we got the 105 and we're like, damn it, we want a 120, and now we want a 140. And how do we become the top B Corp? It gives us best practices. So I mentioned earlier, doing the solar, doing the compostable packages, those aren't bad. In the grand scheme of things, they're not bad, but for us, they're warts that we want to get rid of. And this gives us a way to benchmark ourselves. And it'd be easy to pat ourselves on the back and go, we're organic and we help all these farmers, and that's great, and convince ourselves that we're best for the world. But now through this, I found out that, these guys are using electric truck fleets, and these guys are using solar, and we're not doing that yet. Yeah. And it makes us competitive against something that's actually going to benefit humanity.
Yeah. I think they need like a B Corp rating episode or scene in Portlandia. Like for dating.
It would be a good idea.
When you're looking at prospective dating partners or whatever, you can see their B Corp rating. Like, do they compost? Do they wear, secondhand clothing?
It would be good for our movement.
Yeah.
They would drive some awareness around it. I mean, it's the challenge. There's still less than 3,000 certified B Corps globally. It's growing fast, but you think of how many companies there are. it's a rounding error, and we've got to educate people that these companies are for real. Yeah. And those are the companies that you should be investing your hard-earned dollars with.
Talking about maybe a good place to end on a really depressing note. As a rounding error, I was looking at your videos, and there's this, the map of the whole world and all the area that's farmland, which is most of the world, and the percentage that is organic, let alone regenerative.
Yeah,
I said it, is like it's a rounding error, right?
I mean, the estimates vary, but typically less than 1% is a pretty safe estimate. And
let alone GMO, so we're fundamentally changing the food and
exactly. And I think in countries that have been more progressive about not allowing genetically modified ingredients, like throughout Europe, even India is starting to realize that maybe they went too far.
Right.
A lot more progressive governments than maybe what we have here in the U.S. The way that you're going to get the farmers on board is not by fear tactics. It's not by trying to explain the science. Certainly, it's by showing them that the marketplace is actually bigger for doing it. And what we find in every case, when we try to get a farmer to convert to organic, when they see that their neighbor farmer is happier and healthier and actually able to build a house and have fresh water or dig a well or whatever they want to do, buy a cow, buy a plow, the things that really matter to them. Right. And they find out that the way that they did it was converting from conventional to organic. That's what's driving the farmers. Right. It's farmer to farmer education. The problem is, we're up to 2,500 farmers in India, in a land that's soon to be, a billion people. There are more people in the 18 to 24 year age range in India than there's the entire population of the U.S. If those consumers get behind this movement and drive it at home, they'll convert a lot of farmers. Wow. If it's us shouting and saying we want to sell 10% more tea boxes next year, and Numi and all these other great companies that are pushing organic in the tea space, it'll matter. But it's not going to matter as much as that next generation of the population in these developing markets. If they get a hold of this idea, it'll change the world. So
we need to get you guys in like Indian video games and Indian Bollywood and,
and I think
make it hip.
Talking to the team over there, it's starting to change. I mean, they're hearing the younger generation start to care what's in the food. The caste system is very strong still in India. And so there isn't as much respect if you're in the group that can afford organic products. There's not as much respect historically for the person growing that food. We talk about that like this caste system. It's not really that different than it is in the U.S. If you think about the people buying it, how many people really think about the farmer growing their product? And that whole group of farmers is aging very fast. And we could do that same thing in the U.S. We're not going to have 350 million, new millennials coming in, but if we could get some of them to take up farming and start to convert the land and bring these regenerative practices in, we could actually move the needle here in the U.S. too.
Well, inspiring stuff. So if you had like 5,000 million% more consumers, you could get that many more farmers and that much more land involved.
Yeah, it all starts with the consumer. And I think that's the thing when I said we believe in capitalism is not because we believe in capitalism just because it allows companies to make money. We believe in capitalism because it's the best way for a consumer to vote for what they want. And as long as someone is willing to say, when they go to the store and they see a $6 box of tea that's organic and supports a farmer, and it's next to a $2 box of Lipton, as long as people are willing to take that $2 box of Lipton and maybe close their eyes and cover their ears and pretend that they're not realizing what's happening to that farmer behind the scenes or what's in that cup of tea, it's going to be a hard battle for us. But if we can keep convincing people that it's worth paying more and what the true cost of food is, we've tricked people for 50 years that food is cheap. Food is not cheap. Good food should not be cheap.
By good, you mean simple. It's not even fancy. We're not talking like caviar. We're talking about real healthy and simple food.
Yes, organic plants, heavy plant-based diets. Even if you're going to eat meat, and there's actually some benefits from a regenerative standpoint to having animals involved in the process. If you're going to do it, there's a big difference between a guy that's got 1,000 heads of cattle in a barn somewhere in the Midwest and someone that's letting bison graze on thousands and thousands of acres and actually regenerate the soil in the process of doing it and slaughtering them humanely. And I think we tend to treat everything black and white instead of diving in and going, know your farmer, know the source of your food, and be willing to invest in it. Eat a little bit less and eat higher quality, products, grow your own food if you can, or know your farmer. Those are the kind of things that'll move the needle. But as long as, there's an option to get a $1 burger that gives you the same caloric intake as a, $20 piece of beef that's grown regeneratively. It's hard for people to do,
Totally.
but we've got to get that cycle going in the right direction and invest so that those farmers that grow the food can afford to buy it. That means we got to pay them more for the work that they're doing.
Well, and it actually comes back to us. So, when we buy made in China, one click on Amazon, we're killing middle-class jobs in America, just from an American point of view. And when you kill those jobs, then we're making less, and then we have less money to spend.
Yeah.
So if you reverse that cycle and you pay craftsmen and farmers and, people to do good quality work, and it's good for you, you're saving all the health, or, you're having a better life in some way.
Yeah.
They can make a living, you can make a living, the local economy is stronger.
And when you think of it on the scale, it's not like you're talking about suddenly them, it's like $20 per kilo of Tulsi. I mean, in a lot of cases, it's a few pennies extra or even 50 cents extra makes a huge difference to that farmer.
Sure.
And as that flows through the supply chain and, we add to it and then, process it, and then the Whole Foods takes their margin and UNFI takes their margin. By the time it gets passed on to the consumer, maybe it's a couple bucks, but that couple bucks is putting, if it's putting 40 or 50 cents back into the pocket of the farmer, I think a lot of people, if they understood that connection, would be a lot more likely to say, it's like when you go to a restaurant and you realize someone's working hard and like working for tips. It's hard when you're sitting there looking at someone to like not tip somebody and not tip them well, because you see how hard that job is.
Because they're right there.
The farmer is 8,000 miles away, and you forget about how much toil they're putting in. And if we can bring that to the forefront, someone goes, that $2, if that's putting money in their pocket, I feel good about doing that. That's the education that's required.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Super inspiring stuff. I previously interviewed Michael Paul and Joel Salison. We could put those videos in there. It talks about regenerative and the whole cycle and simple, real food. I thank you for your time and your work. It's a great company. It's awesome. My favorite. I grew up in Boulder in the 80s drinking Celestial seasonings, which I loved.
Yeah.
This is, to me, the new generation of organic and quality and B Corp and all that. So hopefully more companies, including Celestial, will imitate you.
Yeah, we're trying our best.
Yeah.
We want everybody to follow.
Yeah.
We welcome the competition. So,
and this really is like, if we want to fight climate change, support feminism, there's so many angles to this. Clean water, like you were saying, real jobs. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Organic India. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.